On behalf of our faculty and staff, I want to tell you how happy we are for all of you, how proud of you, and we are so grateful for what you have meant to our academic medical center over this last 4 years, or for some of you, even longer. You have brought energy and curiosity and intellectual challenge. There is an ancient saying, what you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others. And all of you are now woven into our lives and into the fabric of what we are as a school. And also on behalf of our school, I want to extend our congratulations to your parents and members of your family. It has been a long journey for all of them, and their love and support has been instrumental in what we are celebrating today. So let's give another applause for your families. A few weeks ago, I read a column in the Sunday New York Times that I believe captures a lot of the challenge that you, our graduates, will encounter as you move into the next step in your career. And it also captures the unique moment of your graduation within the history of medicine. And I say this because of the current revolution in the way you can access information electronically. It's a column by one of the senior medicine and science writers, Gina Collada, and it's on the back of the front page in a format called the Times Insider. And I quote, Times Insider delivers behind-the-scenes insights into how news, features, and opinion come together at the New York Times. It's not very long, and so I can read it to you. The title is, not too long, the title is A Medical Tip's Unexpected Outcome. And I quote, it wasn't supposed to be like this. When a reader sends a tip to the Times, we investigate it, and normally one of two things happens. It becomes a story or it doesn't pan out. What's unusual is when the course of investigating a tip leads a journalist to debunk it, and that becomes the story. In my 30 years of writing about science and medicine for the Times, it had never happened to me until now. And although I wavered for a while about whether to go ahead with the reporting, it ended up as an article about doctors' hesitation to use tissue plasminogen activator, TPA, a drug for people experiencing stroke. It started with a tip in February from a Canadian emergency medicine doctor who said in an email that TPA, a widely promoted drug, was not only useless, but dangerous. It could cause bleeding in the brain. Yet the drug was advocated by medical societies and continued to be used, he said, because there were powerful corporate interests influencing practice guidelines and encouraging doctors to believe the drug worked. I knew about TPA and had always thought it was the only treatment that reduced disability when given to people within a few hours of a stroke caused by a blood clot that blocked a vessel in the brain. Had I been duped? And Collada goes on. I called the Canadian doctor who said there were 15 clinical trials of TPA in stroke patients, 13 failed to show a benefit, and the 2 that found one were deeply flawed. He referred me to an emeritus professor of emergency medicine at UCLA. I emailed to speak to him and asked for suggestions of others who also questioned the drug. And I emailed a Harvard professor who is a stroke expert. The Harvard professor got back to me immediately. Oh no, he said, not that small but vocal group of disbelievers again. The TPA data are strong and convincing, he said. The failed trials were ones that tried to expand the use of the drug, for example, by seeing if it was possible to extend the time interval when the drug was effective beyond 4 hours after the stroke began. He emailed a group of academic stroke experts asking them to contact me. I can always tell when a story hits a nerve. People rush to call or email. That's what happened this time with the TPA advocates. My inbox was flooded. One American doctor emailed me from Saudi Arabia, where he was giving a lecture. I also spoke to dissenters, and it seemed that the evidence in favor of the drug was overwhelming. The major professional societies, after reviewing the data, had given it their highest possible recommendations for use. What to do? The tipster had acted in good faith, but his tip had backfired. The simplest thing would be to drop the story. I told the UCLA professor what I was hearing. "This is no surprise, Gina," he said. He knew many neurologists adamantly disagreed with the dissenters' views, but said he had also heard from neurologists who told him that they felt great pressure to give the drug. They feel that it's a bit of career suicide if a neurologist bucks his or her professional spokespeople. By now, I was fascinated. What I was seeing seemed to be the medical version of fake news, with TPA skepticism being spread by social media and blogs. The result is that as many as 15 to 30% of stroke patients who could have been helped by the drug did not get it. I wanted to write this story, but I needed a victim who knew about his or her missed chance. Many, parentheses, many never find out. I found one, the father of a researcher who was a principal investigator for the original study showing TPA worked in strokes. But when this expert's father went to an emergency room with a stroke, the doctor there refused to administer it. The TPA advocate's father denied the drug was permanently disabled. Quite a story. Two completely different interpretations of existing data. Skepticism about potential conflicts of interest and financial incentives. Conspiracy theories that spread rapidly on the internet. And when I think about your future, our future, that profiles of each of us will be created by the Googles and the Amazons so that our tendencies can be used to populate our searches, it will be even more challenging for us to filter, to sift, to appropriately handle a world in which the amount of information available is mind-boggling. The big question is, how will you handle it? What will you do in your own practice? You already know from your experience here that there may not always be one approach that is right and another that is wrong, and that it may depend on something specific about the patient or the setting in which you are seeing the patient. How will you handle uncertainty? How will you learn the evidence? And will you keep up with the latest advances in healthcare as science and technology are inexorably marching along? Everyone up here believes we gave you the foundation. This is why we taught you the basic sciences and statistics and how to interpret the literature, how to make sure you understand all about the opposing view and why it doesn't meet the stringency test to invalidate the mainstream approach, how to deduce when something makes sense in the clinical world, how to ask, how to learn. A few days after I read this article, one of your classmates asked me what were the keys to a successful career as he moved on to residency. Many, many things came to my mind, but two stood out. Insatiable appetite for learning, laser-like focus. And I believe these are the two things that will help all of you, all of us, to address the situation Gina Collada wrote about. These two things are not exactly congruent. An insatiable appetite for learning is a form of openness, and it is critically important that you open yourselves to learning about everything. You will need to learn about all the science and all of the art of medicine to have a great career as a physician. You must read about the opposing view and be able to judge it on its merits and whether it is biased by conflict. But laser-like focus is a form of closure, of narrowing, and it is also essential to a great career. In particular, it will be essential for your residency and fellowship when you have to prioritize every minute of the day. How can you be both? Open to learning everything, but focused on one thing at a time. It will not be easy, and it's such a noisy world, and now it is almost as noisy outside the hospital as it is when we're inside the hospital. But you must do it. What I have seen in the most successful physicians is that they know how to compartmentalize their time. They work hard and constantly work at improving their own efficiency and effectiveness. They set aside time to read regularly, consistently, and broadly. They never cease to educate themselves. And by the way, as you heard earlier, they always make sure to set aside time for their families and their friends. This will not be easy either, but a life outside of medicine that is rich and meaningful will make you even more successful in your career. You work hard, but when you get in the car to go home, work is over, and the other part of your life is essential. Compartmentalize your time. And please never forget the lessons you learned here from your teachers and mentors about compassion. This is such an important part of your education so far, and you must keep working at it. When people come to you for medical care, they are always at their most vulnerable. In many cases, it's not just your skill or your knowledge, but the little things that make a difference for your patients. Knowing them, being there at critical moments, giving them confidence that the next step is the right step. You will be surprised at how important these simple things are to families at vulnerable moments. I want to end with two wonderful passages from Dr. Seuss. And for you, I have taken the liberty of stringing them together. The more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. And will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. It is now time for each of you to go on from here with an insatiable appetite for learning, laser-like focus, and compassion. We know you can do it, and we know with those things you will have a life like the one recommended by Dr. Seuss. Congratulations to all of you.